Hey guys, what's going on? And welcome to Product Sourcing Mastery with me, Sada Onsourcing. And today we have a fantastic guest for you, Mr. Rahul Chawla from QIMA.com or QIMA.com. How would you pronounce that, Rahul?
Yeah, we call the company as Kima, but in Chinese, of course, QY means chi. So people in China, they call us Chima.
Right, okay, perfect. Well, so Rahul is a quality control expert, and as you all know, quality control is a key component of anybody who's dealing with importing physical products. So I'm going to hand over to Rahul and let him tell you everything there is to know about quality control as he is the expert in this field. So Rahul, tell us a little bit about your origin story. How did you get into quality control? Like what's your background really?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me. It's quite a good opportunity to talk to sellers and discuss things. So how I got into QC? Well, I'm a textile engineer by qualification, and when I graduated, I was being put to a factory very in a remote area in India, and I was not happy to go there. So I was like, no, not my cup of tea because I come from a place which is quite urban, and that place was really remote. So I didn't want to go there. So then I explored around, and I got through a company in New Delhi, very close to New Delhi, actually, suburbs, and they were into QC and testing. So that was the first time when I started my career back in the day, 13 years ago. And yeah, from there it started. I got into QC in and testing and factory audits, those services which I'm still doing.
Okay, amazing. So you're actually on the ground in China at the moment in Shenzhen?
Yeah, that's correct. So I moved to China 7 years ago.
Okay, and how are you finding it?
It's pretty nice. It's quite different from India, of course, and China. The world comes here to source, so that's also something good here that you can learn different perspectives, different experiences, which is quite nice.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I actually love China. I miss going back out there. As soon as I can head back, we will.
Yeah,
But who knows when that's going to be? Fingers crossed. Exactly.
yeah,
So
yeah.
tell us a little bit more about Kima. What do you guys do? What kind of services do you offer customers, and so on?
Sure. So some of you might know us from the older name that we had called Asia Inspection. So we started the company 15 years ago in Hong Kong. So our founder and CEO, Sebastian Bratto, he was earlier into gift and premium business. He was buying things from China and selling them into European countries. And he used to deal with a lot of QC companies, and it was quite a hassle. So he thought, okay, I'll start my QC company. So he gave up the trading business he had, and he started Asia Inspection, 15 years ago in Hong Kong. And as you know, the name says itself, Asia Inspection. So we started first in Asia, and we started first with inspection service only. But gradually, with lapse of time, we grew quite aggressively. We got into newer markets, we got into newer sourcing countries. So we started doing inspections in Europe, in other parts of Asia, in Middle East, Americas, and so on. And we are not just Asia. And then we started doing lab testing services and also audits. So it wasn't just inspections. And then we also acquired a lot of companies. So the company as a whole, the group was growing quite a bit. So we thought of renaming the company as Kima, which is the new name today. So we rebranded the company in December 2018 to this new name, Kima. So yeah, same company, new name, more services. So today we serve thousands of companies across the globe in 85 countries with our inspection and audit services. So we can do inspections anywhere you ask: China, India, Malaysia, Thailand, Americas, Egypt, Middle East, Africa, you name it, Europe, everywhere. And then we also do audits. So we do audits for ethical compliance, manufacturing audits, environmental audits, and so on. And also we do lab tests. So we have our own laboratories in mainland China. We have three: Dongguan, Shanghai, Hangzhou. Then we have a fourth one in Hong Kong. Then we got another laboratory in Germany, in the city of Hamburg. Then in the US, we got another laboratory in upstate New York. It's in Buffalo City, very close to Niagara Falls. And then we got a lab in Mexico, and it's actually growing because we are acquiring companies quite often. So we are really, working on, growing our capabilities very constantly, I would say.
So yeah, truly a global company by the sounds of it, huh?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
look, Rahul, I mean, the people that are going to be listening to this will want to know a couple of key things regarding quality control. Now,
Hmm.
obviously, we both know the importance of quality control, but
Yes.
maybe not everybody gives it enough importance. And I
Hmm.
guess one of the first things I wanted to talk about is before working with any supplier, before choosing a supplier, before sort of going ahead, signing off
Hmm.
contracts or giving them a deposit or whatever the case might be, what
Hmm.
kind of inspections or audits can be done on the factory by your company, or what kind of inspections can you carry out to sort of give the importer greater assurance that they're dealing with somebody who's
Yeah.
legitimate, somebody who's reliable?
So the first audit that we could be doing is a manufacturing audit where we go to the factory, we check their certificates, what they have, we look into what kind of machines do they have, are the machines really working or not? I mean, they can have 100 machines, but if only 10 are working, the 90 are useless. So we check what is their capacity, how much they can really produce, what kind of people have they employed, are the people are really skilled to their jobs, or do they have R&D? Do they have QA system in place? Do they follow Lean Six system or Kaizen or whatnot? So we basically assess their capacity and capability. So that's kind of an audit we call as manufacturing audit. So that's done when, let's say, you have three potential suppliers and not you, and you're not 100% sure which one to go with. So we go to the three factories, we do the audit, we give you the report, and then you decide, okay, these two are good for me, the third one is not, right? Perhaps the third one is not good today. We give him, a corrective action plan, and we go again after 2 months. We check if he stands back good, then we can you can choose the third one also. So that's one. The second one is ethical audit. Now, in ethical audit, you could choose BSCI or SEDEX or SLCP, such kind of audit. So in those audits, we go to the factory. We basically are checking about all the social issues, like there should not be any child labor, the worker should be paid on time, there should not be harassment, or there should not be any overtime, and so on and so forth. So all the social compliance issues is what we go and check. Of course, health and safety and fire safety and all of those things also are checked. So that's something. Uh, Actually, in e-commerce, the second one is not very common because it's not like most e-commerce companies are small or mid-sized, so there's not a lot of pressure on them to really prove the supply chains are ethical enough. The big companies, yes, they do it, the Walmarts and the Targets and the Macy's kind of companies and the Debenhams, they all do all this. Smaller e-commerce companies, they really don't do it, but I suggest they do it because, one, of course, it speaks of your you know moral compass, that yes, you are really concerned about those things. Second, clear conscience that you are doing things right. And the third, what we actually have seen, and actually we did this study a few years ago, that the factories which were ethically compliant had better productivity and quality of the products. Because I mean, it's
Okay, that's
simply logic,
interesting.
a worker who is happy, is being paid on time and not harassed, of course he's going to put everything what is needed, to do the good production. A happy worker is a productive worker, something like that, right? So yeah, it's kind of a small investment, but it actually pays back in the longer term in a very good way.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, so for e-com sellers these days who are sort of doing Amazon FBA, Shopify, Etsy, whatever platforms, maybe they're selling on all of them. What
Hmm.
kind of factory audit would you suggest they do? Obviously, people have limited budgets.
Mm,
So, if they've got three suppliers to choose from, would you
mm,
suggest that they audit all three? Because obviously that's going to add up, isn't it? The cost of
yeah,
sort of auditing
yeah,
each factory. I mean, what do
yeah.
you think, based on your experience, is the most important to go with?
Hmm. So I would say manufacturing audit is the most important one because that really tells you where the factory stands, whether they are really good for you or not. Okay. But again, it depends. Some people deal with it without even doing an audit. Some people just, they talk to the factory and they can really trust. I know trust is difficult to do, especially in these times. You don't know who to trust. But some people really go with their gut feeling and all their, past conversations with the factory representatives, and they go ahead with it without even doing an audit. So it depends. I mean, if the seller is really looking forward to a factory which will be working with them for a long time, let's say if they see a horizon of, let's say, 3 years, I think it's a good thing to do because you're going to spend time and money for 3 years. So I think you have to be 100% sure what you're doing with that factory. If that factory is not good enough, I'm sure you will be regret all those 3 years, or you will be looking for new companies every 6 months.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I definitely am a strong believer in doing factory audits and pre-qualifying factories before even working with them. But okay, that's factory audits. So moving on to quality control, which is a bit more of an in-depth topic. What
Yeah,
kind of quality inspections are available? Because there's so many different types. Can we just briefly go through each one and the importance
sure.
of it and which one should people be choosing again?
So basically, when it comes to quality control inspections, it's more about the stages that you do at. So the first one we call as IPC, initial production check. That's when the factory is just starting with the production under 20% stage. We go there, we see what are the initial pieces that they look like, are they good in quality or not, etc., etc. And we inform you, okay, hey, this is what we found when they just started. So yes, there are few issues. Perhaps you can go to the factory, speak with them and ask them to correct those issues. So it's like, you find problems early on and then you ask the factory to make the changes quite early on, unlike doing things at the end when there is no time left to make any changes. Similar way during production check is done from 20 to 80% stage. I ideally it should be done like 40%. It's a good time to do. So at 40%, 50% production stage, we go there, we check if there are problems found, uh, we report to you, and then you take action with the factory. And the last one is pre-shipment inspection, which is some people call as final inspection. So that is done when more than 80% goods are ready and packed, minimum 80%. Okay. So that's when we go there, we see a whole lot, we see what has been going on, the defects. We look, of course, workmanship, pick, those logos and packaging and all sorts of things, functionality of the product. We check everything and we let you know what we found, and then you make a decision whether to let that shipment go out of the factory to your warehouse or Amazon warehouse or not. Okay, so that's called as pre-shipment inspection. And then in some cases, not many, actually quite few, is we do it as production monitoring. So that's more when you would want us to go daily to the factory every single day of the production time, and we report to you daily what has been
Okay.
going on. Yeah, but that's quite
Yeah,
rare, especially in e-commerce. That's almost nil. We don't have any case in e-commerce.
sure. So, I mean, again, out of all of those, which ones do you think are the most important? So, the first one you mentioned, I think a lot of people refer to as a raw materials inspection, perhaps. And
Hmm.
then the mid-production inspection, and then the pre-shipment. But
Yeah,
obviously, which is the most important? Because some people simply don't have the budget to
yeah,
do factory audits and to carry out every single inspection at every stage of the process. So,
yes.
based on your experience, like what do you think is the most important thing that people should be carrying out the most important inspection?
So the most important one is obviously the pre-shipment inspection because that's like you are really checking what's really going to come out of the factory. So
Mhm.
that's the most important one. If the person has a little more extra budget, I would recommend a during production check also because yes, you find problems early on, so there are lesser chances of defects later. But during production check, it doesn't rule out that you don't do the pre-shipment inspection. Pre-shipment inspection is absolute necessary.
Sure. Okay. Understood. So, I mean, in terms of AQL is something that's mentioned quite a lot in quality control or QC. So what is AQL? Because some people looking at these tables get really baffled. I would put one up on screen, but I think it's better that we can just briefly talk through it. What is an AQL? What does it stand for? What is 2.5? What is 4? What is 3? And what should people be choosing when they're doing a quality inspection?
So AQL is the full form is acceptable quality limit. Okay, that's an international standard for sampling when we do the inspection. So we actually have a brilliant simulator on our website. So if you go to QIMA.com/AQL acceptable quality limit. So if you go to this particular page, I can send you the link. You can post it on the video description. So there you can actually put down your quantity, and it will tell you how many pieces should be checked. So let's take an example. If let's say you have 2,000 pieces of a product, okay. Now the first thing we need to define is the inspection level, okay, for the workmanship. So there are different levels: 1, 2, 3, S1, and so on. So the most widely used is the level 2 for the inspection. And when you ask me 2.5 or 4, now those things are basically the AQL for the defects. Okay, so when you say 2.54, which is again the most common one, so 2.5 is for major and 4 is for minor. Okay, and critical we have put it at 0. So as per that, 2,000 total quantity. So we should be pulling out a sample size of 200. Okay, and the acceptable points are 10, while the reject points are 11 for major, and for minor, the acceptable points are 14 and the reject point is 15. So this is basically a calculation based on which we give the pass or fail status of the report. So we find the defects, okay, based on the checklist. We define each defect as major, minor, or critical. Okay, so the number of critical and the number of major and the number of minor we find based on those. So if let's say we found 12 major defects, okay, now the reject point for major as per the current example is 11, so which is beyond 11. Okay, so we call it as beyond AQL, so we fail this report. Okay, likewise, so you don't have to really get confused about it. My simple advice is go for level 2. It's very widely commonly used level. 2.54 is quite good. If you want to be a little more strict, maybe you choose 1.54. Okay, but of course, depending on the product and your market, we can advise you. We have experts, and we can look into your product details. We can even help you to develop checklists. We can take the points from you and help you to develop checklists for your product.
Oh, that's fantastic. So actually the customer themselves doesn't need to create a checklist for you. They can simply just tell you what the product is, and then you guys will develop the checklist.
So there are two things that we actually suggest here. What I do with my e-commerce client is I tell them, because look, it's very important that you actually understand what you're doing in your business and exactly you understand the product. Okay, otherwise you can actually be getting into problems with your supplier. So how one should do is take your product. Let's say I have a bottle in my hand. Okay, so I take the bottle. Okay, and I think, okay, if I buy this bottle from any other, e-commerce seller, or if I go and buy this from a shop or a, supermarket, what will I look for? Okay, so think yourself as a customer first. So yeah, I'll see, okay, fine. The cap of the bottle should be screwing back well. It should be, sitting nicely on my table. The logo should be nice. The color should be okay. There should not be any leakage, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So jot down those points. Okay, think yourself as a customer. Okay, then second thing which I always suggest is go to your competitors listings, read through their reviews, what they have got as complaints, and also the good things. Okay, so see both good and bad what your competitors might have got on their listings already, and then take out some points from there also. So you jot down these points. Okay, then you also write what is really important for you among these points. that's how we know, okay, what is more important. Because what happens is, yes, we have checklist, but look, we serve so many thousands of customers of different backgrounds, different markets. So something which might be selling well in UK might not sell well in Japan. Okay, people are different. It's all about consumer behavior, which I'm really firm believer in. So you have to tell us, okay, what's your market looking for? Okay, what you are looking for. You are sitting there in London, as I know, so you know well what really sells well in London. It rains a lot, so yes, the product has to be, let's say, waterproof, or at least sprinkle proof, right? Something like that. So once you give us these points, then we can help you with our generic checklist, merge them together, and then we create a new checklist, a customized one.
Okay. And would you suggest that that checklist is sent to the factory beforehand to give them a heads up as to what's going to be inspected exactly? And how does that work? Who's responsible for doing that? Would that be the quality control inspection agency? Would that be the customer who's doing that? Who's responsible for sending this checklist?
Okay, good question. So yes, 100%, it should be given to the factory, and I would say it should be given very, very early. Okay, maybe even when you're signing the PO with them, okay, give it to them along with the PO, because look, they need to understand what your expectations are. Let's not take them for granted, because again, they are also serving many customers. You are selling in the UK, someone else is selling in Japan, they have their own requirements, somebody else has their own requirements. So you have to tell them, you have to set your expectations how you want them to be, right? So you tell them, hey, this is what I want, this is a checklist. Okay, also a good advice which from my side is, try to have this checklist translated into the local language of the factory. If you're sourcing from China, get it done in Chinese. If you're sourcing from Vietnam, get it done in Vietnamese, and so on. Because most often, perhaps you are dealing with the factory owner who might know English, or a sales rep, but the guy on the production floor does not know English, most likely. Okay.
Right.
So if you give it in local language, it will be quite nice, because then that local guy also understand exactly what you need, and he's the one who is going to produce on the production floor, right? So it's
Right.
always helpful to send the right message to the right person in the right language. Otherwise, things get lost in translation. Yeah, movie quote. So
Okay. Yeah.
this really helps. So speaking of the responsibility, it's the responsibility of the buyer, the e-commerce seller. He has to deal with the supplier and give all the details to them, because they have to set the expectations. They have to write the supplier contract and mention what is to be done, and if things are not done, what will be the repercussions on the factory. So those things are to be dealt between the two parties involved in the buying and selling process.
Sure. And then I guess moving on, like in terms of quality control, so that's really a fantastic point that these checklists should be sent even or during whilst the PO is actually sent out to the factory, just to make them aware of what's going to be checked. But then the next question that springs to mind is, what kind of certificates are required for different types of product? And this is going to be quite a loaded question, but because there's so many different types of products, right? And obviously there's lab testing that needs to be done. As you're scrolling through Alibaba, you see that a particular supplier, for example, most recently I've been talking a lot about heaters simply because I'm in London and it's very, very cold at the moment. But let's just say we're talking about an electric powered heater here, okay, that's got lots of different components involved and needs certification. But I don't only want to sell to the UK. I also want to sell to other countries in the EU, and I want to sell this product into America, and I want to do worldwide global distribution. Now, I know that every country's got their own certification requirements. Now, the factory is saying, well, we have CE, we have FCC, we have ROHS, and so on, right? Now, when they say that, does that mean that all their products are covered by these certificates, or does it mean that only the one product that's mentioned in the certificate is covered? And how do we handle certification essentially, and whose name should be on the certificate again? Because what I've noticed is, well, from clients anyway, is that third-party selling platforms like Amazon will want you to present a quality certificate, or sorry, a regulatory certificate in your name, not in the factory's name. So how does that work? Can you just, I know, as I said, it's a loaded question, but if you can just break down the process.
Yes, I would love to, because this is one of the favorite topics of mine, because hardly anyone is paying attention to this, and they pay attention when they're really forced to pay attention to this. So here I start. So number one, you don't necessarily need certificates. Okay. Majority of the products need only the lab test report. Okay. Majority of them. Okay. Certificate is not required in most of the cases. That's number one. Secondly, suppliers will show you many jazzy papers and certificates and whatnot. Please don't accept them. Don't go by the face value that they present to you, because one, on Alibaba, you can put down anything. Nobody's going to check what is really there, whether it's valid or not. Two, most of the times what we have found is certificates or the lab test reports that they present to you, either they are fake, or they're too old, or they are from a lab which is not even approved enough to do those lab tests. So every lab, first of all, has to have an ISO 17025 accreditation. That's a basic. Like, really, without that, no lab can even operate to issue a lab test report. Secondly, there are some other accreditations which are required, like let's say for CPSC. So if you're selling in US, you have to follow the CPSI regulation. Now, CPSI testing should be done, actually can be done only in a lab which is CPSC approved. Okay. So what we have seen is, a lot of times the factories, the suppliers, they give the reports which are not from the correct lab. And you as a seller can fall into a big problem. Okay. Next up, these all requirements actually are not coming from Amazon or even Shopify or whosoever, but actually these are made by the government bodies in each region. The Amazon or the Shopify's or the eBay's kind of companies, because they are giving the platform to you for you to sell on, it kind of becomes their responsibility to ensure that everything is being followed. So that's why they're really pushing it, because they also got pressure from these bodies and different NGOs and different lawyers that, hey, you guys are allowing someone to sell on a platform. What is your responsibility? So that's why they come after you and they keep on asking things. So it's 100% mandatory to do this. You can even give up your inspection if you want to, forget quality control if you don't have money for it. But this is something you always have to have money for this, because this is a legal requirement. Okay. People fall into lawsuits, people face recalls, the listings go down, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of different repercussions what would happen. And then, look, I'm sure none of us would like our loved ones to fall sick or get harmed or to even die. I mean, I wouldn't want to drink from a bottle which is not tested for food contact material regulations. I don't want to die of lead and cadmium. I don't want my children to get hurt with toys which are not safe. So it's also about your moral responsibility. And besides that, yes, there are legal complications which are involved. So you cannot skip this ever, and you really cannot take it casually. Now, to do it, so this was the serious part. Now, how you manage? Let's come to the solution. So number one, as I said, it's mandatory. Okay, so you have to. I'm always like, find the issues early on, and don't wait for the things to get messy later on. Okay. So as I said, this is mandatory. So what you should actually be doing is, we as Schema, by the way, we give free quotations for lab test. Okay. You give us the product details. We tell you what needs to be done, what tests have to be done, how much time it will take, what is the cost involved. Okay. And this quotation is given to you for free within 24 hours. Okay. So as we give these quotations for free, what you should do is at the product research stage, the very, very first stage, when you are like, yeah, okay, from tomorrow I'll sell on e-commerce. Okay, what do I sell? Should I sell this bottle? Should I sell this, earpods case, or should I sell this piece of paper, whatsoever? Okay, so I go on some product research tools and I look around and I start doing my calculations. Now, since this is mandatory, you have to involve the cost in the budget.
Okay.
If you don't include this cost into the budget when you are choosing the product, you can be falling into a lot of troubles with your profit margins later on.
So
Okay,
really it's the seller's responsibility again to be carrying out
100%,
lab testing.
100%, 100%. The one
Yeah.
who is selling, the one who owns the brand, the one who is because in the terms of the legalities and the legislations, the brand is the manufacturer. So when you actually read the regulations, it will always say manufacturer, but manufacturer doesn't mean the factory. It means you. Okay.
Right.
So it's your 100% responsibility to make sure that the product is safe. It complies with the regulation. If it doesn't, you fall into a problem. Okay. So how do we solve this? So you find two products, okay, and you tell me, okay, Rahul, I'm selling this. It's made of plastic, ABS. It has this green label. It has a white cap. It has rubber inside the cap. Okay, and this I'm selling in US. This thing I'm also selling in US. It has got. It's made of silicone. I'm just talking about the cover, by the way. It's made of silicone. Then it has got this ring kind of a thing. This is made of steel, and so on and so forth. So I'll tell you, okay, this is what it is. This one needs 3 tests, let's say $300 cost. This one needs 5 tests, let's say $500 cost. So then you think, okay, maybe with this 300, I'm still losing because the profit margin, it's a small item and perhaps $1 cost, while this one I can make much more money. Even the testing cost is a little higher than this one. Okay, so do your calculations, make sure you include the testing cost within these budgets, and then you think, okay, should I go with this or should I go with that?
Okay, that makes sense. So literally every single product, irrespective of what it is, should be tested, or are there some products which you can get by without doing any testing on? So for
Glad you
example, a
asked me.
pen, right? You've got a really basic product. It's a pen. What could go wrong with a pen?
Okay, do you
Why does it
know,
need testing?
do you remember we used to like chew the pen sometimes when we were kids?
That's right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Good
chemicals,
point.
sir. Yeah,
Yeah.
chemicals. The plastics have chemicals.
Okay, that's
So
very
actually,
interesting.
glad you asked me. Every single product, majority of them have to be tested, and this is another misconception in the minds of e-commerce sellers. They think, okay, it's only electronics or maybe only children's products that have to test. No, everything. You sell some spoons for the kitchen, or you sell a bottle, or you sell a wine opener, you sell an earphone. Everything has to be tested for something or the other, and then you don't have to pay to know what has to be tested. We will tell you if it really needs testing or not. If it doesn't, be happy, no problem, ask us at least.
Okay. And then in that case, regarding testing, so we've now done a test or not done a test based on your advice. Then
Yes,
how do we get specific certificates? For example,
sure.
UL, RHS, FCC, whatever it might be for the product.
So like I said, certification is not necessary most often, except in certain cases, like you said, FCC and so on. So there we will help you when it comes to it. But first, even before the certification, there is testing necessary. So lab test is the most important thing. And like I said, e-commerce, 90% of the products are actually only for lab testing, which is required. Okay. So it's very simple. So first you start at the product research stage. You ask us for quotation for every product that you potentially think you might sell. Okay. We will give you a cost, it's kind of an idea, let's say 100, 200, 2000, 5000, whatever the cost. Okay. You do your calculation. Once you confirm on a product, move forward, find a supplier, Okay, look for the suppliers, credibility and different things. Do your own assessment. If you wish, we can go to the factory and do the factory audit and let you know what how the factory is. Okay, you have shortlisted the factory, you have chosen the factory. Then okay, you draft a supplier agreement, okay, supply contract. There you give them the then you confirm your checklist together with us. Okay, we create a checklist together. You put that checklist in English and Chinese to the factory, you give them the supplier agreement. There itself, you mentioned two, three things. One, every product will be inspected. If the inspection fails, they pay for the inspection. Same way, testing, every product will be tested. If it fails, they have to pay for the retest. Okay. So you have given the PO to the factory along with the checklist and everything else. Okay. Now that's the time when you tell the factory, hey, we need to make sure that the products comply with the regulation. So I've got this quotation from QIMA already. We have to send in the product to get it tested. Now, here is a question which comes to me is when you should test. So the big companies who have got enough budgets and they have a wide, area of products because they can manage the, profit margins, balance them here and there. So they do the testing pre-production and also on the production. So on the pre-production they might test certain raw materials, even the final product before the actual production bulk goes on. But at least you should do at least the bulk production testing. So from the bulk, I suggest again as early as possible. So I suggest go when at least, let's say, 5% products are ready. Okay, from the very first 5%, ask the factory to pull out some pieces, the number of pieces, we'll tell you how many we need, and then send it to our laboratory. We receive the product in our hands. We reconfirm the quotation. I'll tell you why we reconfirm the quotation, because sometimes what we have seen, uh, because initially when you do the quotation with us at the product research stage, you are doing this over the emails. You send us pictures only, while the actual product might be a little different sometimes. So let's say it's the same bottle. Okay, now if you send me only this picture like this, sorry, here I just see this, but perhaps inside of the cap, let's say you had a red color inside. Okay,
Mhm.
so that red color is another ink, and ink equals to chemical. Okay,
Right.
so we give you a final quotation when we receive the actual product. Most often the final quotation doesn't change from the draft quotation, but sometimes it does. So anyway, we receive the final product in our hands. We give you a final quotation. You say, yeah, this sounds cool to me. Go forward, test it. We test it, and you get the report from us. Simple and easy.
Okay, that's very interesting that lab testing is required and there's so much in depth that goes into it. Because obviously there's some sellers out there that have maybe 100, 200 SKUs, and I very much doubt that everybody's carried out lab testing on every single product. They've probably just relied on their factories and whatever certificates, fake or real, have been presented to them, and just purchased the product because they thought they negotiated a decent price. But that's very interesting.
Sadly enough, this really saddens me because now Amazon seems like there are a lot of products which are actually not tested because most people don't care. They're really worried about margins, but eventually, these things come back to you. I have seen cases which come to me, and suddenly Amazon, because Amazon, what they do is not just Amazon, anyone, even the regulatory bodies, they pull out products randomly from the market, or Amazon might randomly pick out products from the warehouse, and they might ask you for the certificates or the testing reports. If you don't have them, you are done. Literally, your listing will be going away. Your product can face a recall or a lawsuit. That
Mm.
goes really, hard on the sellers. We have got cases. There was one woman who was in Australia, and she was selling some children's products in the US without doing anything. And the worst thing is, you are given only week, maximum 2 weeks to do everything possible. So they will say, okay, fine, you don't have it, we give you a week, get everything sorted and come back to us with the papers within a week, otherwise we can't let you sell. So it's such a panic situation. You're given only 7 days to do everything because testing also needs time. We need from minimum 3 days to even as long as 10 days to do the test, because the machine take their time. Like, we run things, this is again all chemical analysis and whatnot, so that needs time. If you don't have time, things are so difficult. And
Is,
again, moral responsibility. Like, what happens if some of our own buys such a unsafe product and falls sick? We don't want that. I'm sure nobody
mm,
wants that. So if we don't want with our own loved ones to face that, how can we let anyone else fall into those problems because of our products which are not compliant? That's not right? That's not fair.
yeah, no, certainly. I think it really is a major issue. I mean, you've probably seen, like I have, on a lot of Amazon forums, people talking about suddenly being asked for these certificates regarding toys,
Yeah.
especially when they're selling in America, more and more recently by third party selling platforms like Amazon.
Mm.
And I guess, what does somebody do in that circumstance where they've already imported the goods and the goods are already sitting in Amazon? At that stage, is there any recourse? They just have to pull their goods out if they can't. Can you not quickly do some testing on a sample,
That
maybe, and then present the certificate based on that and hope for the best?
Okay, you know what? This is not the first time I'm hearing this. This comes to us. We have seen those cases,
Mm,
with us. So yeah, first of all, your listing is suspended right away. Two, you're asked to send a sample. So we have labs in the US, also in Mexico, both. So the samples can be sent locally there or to our lab in China or Hong Kong, and we can test and try to help you as early as possible. But again, some tests take their due time. We don't know. So again, you don't have to wait for that. I mean, why does somebody has to wait for that situation to happen?
No, I totally agree with you. I believe, the whole sort of fail to plan, plan to fail ethos,
Yeah,
ultimately everything should be done well in advance, regarding
yeah,
your planning,
yeah,
regarding finding the right suppliers,
yeah,
regarding testing and so on,
yeah,
quality
yeah,
control inspections.
yeah.
So look,
And
when
by the
it,
way,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt. And by the way, one more thing I should tell you, because this is something new, because you mentioned you would like to sell everywhere globally. So let's
Mm,
say you are a seller in the US and you want to sell in Europe. Okay. Now there is a new, law in the EU. If your product is CE marked, by the way, CE is not a certificate; it's just a mark. You are either required to put it or you are prohibited to put it. Okay, there's nothing like advised to do CE. Okay, if your product needs CE, you have to put it. If it doesn't require, you can never put it. Okay, so every CE marked product has to have an authorized representative in the EU. Okay, this has been applicable from 16th of July 2021.
okay.
Okay, this is a new law under the EU market surveillance rule. So what happens is, what really happened was, people across the globe, they were selling products through e-commerce on the European market, and the EU regulatory bodies, they didn't have a really mechanism to ask whether the products were compliant or not. And it was hard for them also to find somebody in China, or like, because there are Chinese sellers who are selling on EU market, or even Americans, or even Middle Eastern people. So it was getting hard for them to reach out to them for different compliance papers and so on. So that's when this rule came in. So they say, oh no, we need somebody in EU to represent you, so that there is at least a good communication channel.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's also really important. Besides, every market has their own compliance rules. So the testing report, which is on the regulations of the US, doesn't hold for the EU. You have to get it done separately. The regulations in the EU are different from the US, is different from the Australia, or different from Japan. Every market is different with their own requirements. Okay, so US and EU being the major ones. If you're trying to go global, at least have your product tested for both US and EU regulations. And if your product is CE marked, make sure you have an authorized representative in Europe. While
And
KIMA can be one if you need.
okay, that's interesting. So the actual seller, so say you're an overseas seller, an Australian seller who's selling in the EU, can they not be the authorized representative?
No, so you need to have someone physically in EU be a representative.
What about a company setting up a
No,
company potentially?
no,
That wouldn't work. It has to be a
no.
physical person, right?
Yes,
Okay, that's
someone
very
to reach out to. So we actually started this service recently because we got a lot of requests, including from a lot of sellers in Australia, Hong Kong, China, and so on, and even US. So we just started this service. We have a company in Germany, which can be a representative in EU for all the overseas sellers outside EU.
right. Okay. Well, that's very useful for a lot of sellers to know, I think, at this stage. And one question with regards to the CE mark, obviously being in the UK, not that I'm an e-com seller myself anymore. This was long gone many years ago. Now we focus a lot more on sourcing, but obviously we're aware that CE doesn't apply to the UK anymore. Do you
So
know what's changed here? Like it's called
yeah.
UKCA, or what is that exactly?
Yeah, so after the Brexit, UK came up with their own mark called UKCA. I don't have the exact details. I have to really look into it. It's quite
Mm,
technical, but I think there was a grace period for about a year. I think it is until end of 2021, where
yeah.
you can still use CE if you already have your inventory. But
Mm,
post that time, I think you need to have UKCA for the UK market.
okay. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess there's probably very specific
Yeah, yeah.
regulatory
But this is
requirements.
this is like a quite a new thing. There are a lot of changes being done gradually.
Yeah.
UK still follows the REACH regulation, which is primarily from the European Union. So that is
Mhm.
still being followed in the UK. So yeah, the UK is making small changes gradually, and I think in a couple of years or maybe a little more, there will be some more changes coming in. So we actually publish regulatory updates on our website and all through the emails. So yeah,
Mm.
most welcome to ask us for the regulatory updates to be sent to you, and we update
No,
everything about different markets and their regulations.
yeah, no, that's really useful. I'm sure a lot of people will be jumping on your website after this and sort of
Yeah,
reading through things
yeah.
very thoroughly.
Or you
If
can just
not,
send me an email if you have a specific question. You can send me an email on rahul.chabla@kima.com, and I'll be happy to help you with your specific questions on your product, or even get you subscribed to our newsletters if you need. Just send me an
uh,
email. That it will be easy for you.
perfect. Expect your inbox to get flooded.
No
Um,
problem.
so the next question I wanted to ask was more going back to the quality control aspect, right?
Hmm.
So now a factory has certain testing equipment and certain equipment that they can't test with, right? So I know that we've already done the lab testing. But now when we come to a pre-shipment inspection report, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
you're pulling out a certain sampling of an electric product, right? Now, what happens? Because obviously, not every quality inspector, I'm guessing, and please correct me on this or give me some further insights, but I'm guessing not every quality inspector walks around with a massive backpack filled with different voltmeters and test meters and calibration meters and so on. So, how is this information conveyed to the
Yeah.
supplier? Who conveys it? When is it conveyed? And who basically ensures that they have all the equipment available, or is it QIMA's responsibility to have their equipment there, or how does that aspect of things work? Because obviously electrical products do
Mm.
require certain testing, especially pre-shipment.
Right. Right. So yeah, we carry a few handy products if they are possible. But yes, you're right. We cannot carry a whole bunch of things with us. So we ask the factory to have things ready and calibrated for us. The responsibility, of course, is between the supplier and the buyer. So you guys have to talk to the supplier that, hey, we need this thing to be tested and this machine is required. So make sure it is calibrated and everything is functioning before the inspector comes in, and let him do his job, because the inspectors are very qualified to use such kind of machines, but the actual calibration and all, that's on the supplier to make sure that it's absolutely correct.
Sure. So would QIMA pre-advise customers what equipment needs to be made available and what equipment needs to be calibrated based on the
Yes.
nature of the product prior to an
Yeah.
inspection?
Yeah. So based on the product and the checklist, what checks we have to do, we can tell
Hmm.
what machines would be needed.
Okay. And in the case of a machine not being calibrated, for example, what then happens? Because obviously the inspector can't carry out their inspection at that stage thoroughly.
Mm.
Then
Mm.
does that automatically get flagged as a failed report because the machine wasn't
Yes.
adequate or?
Yeah. So we will fail that particular checkpoint in the
Right.
report. Yeah.
Okay, so you think that that's something that needs to be stipulated again at the PO
Yes.
stage or at the contract stage that the
Right.
following
Right.
machine.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then look, at the end of the day, the factory is responsible for what they're producing and delivering. So they have to make sure everything is okay and they are in good shape and functioning well as we want them. So they have to be really responsible for what they're doing.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense again. I mean, I'm just wondering, QIMA is such a big organization and covers so many different facets. And I definitely think that having worked with quite a few different quality control inspection companies, that you are definitely the market, if not one of the major market leaders that people should be working with. But
Mm,
my question to you is, again, going into these Facebook groups and Amazon groups and so on, Amazon forums,
mm,
there's always freight forwarders and independent, probably students, I like to say. Similarly, in the sourcing industry, everybody and their dog is now a sourcing agent in China, right? The same way everybody's become a freight forwarder, the same way everybody's become a quality control inspector. Now, these guys are charging sort of, I've heard prices as low as $75 to $150 versus what we both know a reputable quality control inspection agency will charge.
mm,
Now, why not go with one of those people? Let's just say they have an engineering degree or an engineering background, right?
mm, mm.
What would prevent them from doing the checks as accurately as a company such as QIMA might be able to do?
Okay. Can I ask you a question, by the way, before I answer yours?
Sure,
Did
sure.
you live in China before?
I lived in China for close to 20 years. So I'm
Okay.
very I'm very well aware of what can go
Okay.
wrong and so
Okay,
on.
okay. Because
But
when you said students doing it, I'm like, this guy has been there, I'm sure.
I lived there for 20 years. And funnily
Okay.
enough, I went there from day one at 17 years old as a
Mm,
trader. If you can
okay.
imagine that,
Yeah.
17, just fresh out of high school, very fresh face, not knowing anything about China, Chinese business
Mm,
etiquette. I'd never set foot on a factory floor. I didn't have business cards.
mm,
I literally went in there with a sample of what I wanted. Alibaba had just launched. This was in like 1998, and I got there around 2000. So yeah,
mm.
I've spent a lot of time in China. So a
I
lot
can
of the
tell.
stuff that you're talking about is very relevant and relatable. But I think
Yeah.
it's more important that people hear it from you as a qualified professional who's been in that
Mm,
industry and really has their focus on quality.
mm,
So why QIMA? Why not just use the independent
mm.
quality control inspection company?
Okay. You're really taking me 13 years back, because this is how we were trained when I started my job. Like, hey, why you should be with the company and what special do we do? You need to learn that. Yes. So there are lots of reasons to this. One, it's like you ask your driver to check your engine or you ask your mechanical engineer to check the engine of your car. Big difference, right?
Right.
That's number one. You need to have a qualified person suited to the job. So with us, we classify the inspectors as per product range. So we don't send inspectors who have been into mechanical industry do a SOX inspection, or person who is checking skirts yesterday, we send him to do a furniture inspection tomorrow. No, we don't do that. So that's one. We have people who are qualified in their own domain. Okay, they are experienced, and we put them to their specific fields when they go for the inspection. That's one. Two, they're even if they are like 10 years experience, we still put them to trainings, not just once, but very regularly. And when I say regularly, it's like almost every 15 days. So number one, when any inspector he joins the company, he has to undergo 3 weeks training. Okay, that is both classroom and along with his team leader. Okay, then he goes on ground with his team leader. After a month or so, then he is made independent. Even after that, he is given e-learning courses every 15 days. Every e-learning course is followed by a test, and those marks in the test are related to their bonuses. Okay, so we
Okay.
make sure they don't sleep while they're training. We really make sure that they really learn what we are showing them on videos and different things on the e-learning, and also classroom programs. Like we even ask bunch of inspectors to come to the office, and the team leader really trains them and things like that. So we also have an independent training team who is taking care of all the trainings besides their leaders. Every leader has only 10 inspectors under his pool. So this guy, the team leader, is responsible for 10 people under him, and he's also doing surprise checks on his own team. So we call this as MSA, mini surprise audits. So the team leader can go to any factory where his team is doing an inspection and see what his guy is doing. Is he following the right checklist? Is he following the right process and whatnot? And he's responsible to make sure he's really following what he's supposed to. So the team leader is also always watching. We also have an independent compliance team, which is just not related to the operations, main operations. They're totally independent. So these guys also do random checks, surprise on the inspectors. So there's one team leader for his own team, and then there is independent, team also, which can show up anytime.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are always making sure that the inspectors, first of all, they have to be qualified, they have to be experienced. We train them, we make sure that they are doing things right, we audit them, every now and then, and make sure that they're doing things right. Then the whole operation is, it's monitored closely. So we are not the company which is very manual, and this is a big reason why we could grow so aggressively in the market. Is we have IT in our whole DNA. Ever since we started, we are the first company wherein you can go online and book the inspection service. You have an online account to do everything, unlike most companies who ask you to send email and they respond with a quotation, blah blah. We don't do all of that. We make the things faster. So this IT thing is also in the background. Also, it's also built in the operation, so we can actually see excuse me, we can actually see which inspector has gone to which factory, how often, what is his beyond AQL rate, and so on and so forth. We have all these algorithms built in. Okay, so this gives us alerts. Let's say one guy has been to a factory 5 times in the last 5 months. We can actually see how many times he has passed or failed, what how many defects he found, and so on. So then we can easily map the performance of the inspectors. Even the allocation of the inspectors is done through an algorithm. So it's not a human who is allocating inspectors every day. Okay, you have a system. So the system sees, okay, there's an inspection in Guangzhou for a toy, and this factory is like 5 kilometers away, while there was an inspector there like 10 kilometers away yesterday. So perhaps this guy who is qualified in toys can go to this factory. So this guy is automatically allocated. So we
Right.
try to reduce, the risk of conflicts as much as possible. And the whole operations, like I said, it's all monitored through systems. And also, again, we cannot get rid of humans, of course. It's quite important. So the team leaders are watching. I'm involved as an account manager. There are operations managers who are involved. Even the directors are involved. They can anytime, like click of a button, we can know what is happening where. We can easily check things. So those things, really make sure that everything is monitored well, and brought to perfection of the service. Unlike, yeah, so coming back to the examples that you gave, perhaps you ask somebody and he's sending his cousin's sister, husband, to do the inspection. You don't know who's going. You don't know whether that person is qualified enough or not.
Sure.
You don't know whether that person is taking responsibility of what he's doing. You don't know whether that person would be divulging your product details, your factory details to somebody else. Perhaps that guy might start doing e-commerce tomorrow. Hey, I like your factory. I came to the inspection yesterday. I like you. I have the money. Let's start doing e-commerce tomorrow together. Boom, you are done. Your product is
Yeah.
all across here and there, right? So those kind of things are important because we don't do sourcing or selling. We are only into the services I told: inspection, testing, audit, certification. Those things
Mhm.
only. We don't sell. We don't share the factory details. We don't share the product details. Nothing.
Mhm.
So your whole information is very safe with us. So those things are
Yeah.
quite important. Yeah, you will find inspectors with $70, $50, $150, $200. But what matters is like, is is that $100 more important to you, or your whole investment of $5,000 lying at stake because of just $100 that you're trying to save?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think it's the same with us in the sourcing industry. Look, there's people out there that will charge you $100 to source your product for you, or some people that work on purely a commission basis of 5% or 10% or whatever they're charging. But if they're charging you that much, there is an issue somewhere down the line
Yeah,
that you're
yeah,
probably
yeah.
not aware
You know
of.
what? I've seen a lot of good companies who are into buying and sourcing. They do only buying and sourcing. Yes, it's 100% necessary and very advisable to have a good, resource on the ground who can negotiate with the suppliers, see what is being done and so on. But there is still a conflict of interest. If I'm buying sitting in Shenzhen, if I go to Bawan and buy power banks, and I am the one who is also checking those power banks while you are giving me 5% commission, of course I will hide something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I won't get the 5% I can potentially earn from you.
Yeah, yeah, no, precisely. I mean, my opinion on sourcing agents, just to divulge slightly, but people who charge or work on a commission-only basis will generally tend to inflate the price of the product because it's obviously
Mm.
in their interest, right? They want to make as
Yeah.
much money from the client, as opposed to us who just charge you an upfront fee and then that's it. Beyond that, if you want to speak directly to the factory, you're more than welcome to go speak directly to the factory. All contracts, everything's done very transparently. But then there are companies, I don't want to name them, but they pop up on Facebook and social media platforms saying we'll source for free, and
Mm.
there's always a catch, right? But
Yeah.
anyway, look, let's loop back into quality control. I mean, I find it fantastic, and it's really great that you guys have all of these AI systems in place and
Mm.
sort of this auto allocation system and the consistent training for your inspectors. But look, ultimately, human beings are human beings, right? Now, how do you guarantee
Mm.
that an inspector is not going to get bribed going to a factory? And I
Okay.
say this simply because unless your inspector's carrying a body cam on them the whole
Hmm.
time, right? Which they may well be, and that might be the answer you'll give me, but unless the inspector's doing that, and let's just say the shipment is worth $50,000 to the
Mm.
factory, okay?
Hmm. Hmm.
And the only time that the customer is going to release the balance to the
Mm.
factory is on successful inspection.
Mm.
Now, $1,000 to, or let's just say 10,000 RMB. Okay, let's not call it $1,000. Let's call it 10,000
Mm.
RMB because that's a nice round figure. Yuan Kuai is usually a good bribery amount for a boss to potentially consider luring somebody in. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know what the average quality control inspector earns monthly. I have a rough idea, but I'm guessing an extra 10,000 RMB wouldn't hurt.
Mm.
So, what's to stop them taking that? I mean, I know there's anti-bribery letters, so we can talk about that as well. But
Mm.
what's to stop your inspectors taking a bribe from the factory?
Okay. Okay, let me speak like a human being, not like a superhuman being. So yes, I would be lying if I say we don't have such issues. Yes, every company has issues because every company has human beings.
Mm,
But to be honest, because this is I've been doing this for 13 years. I worked with some big companies also back in the day when I was in India. And yes, speaking of anti-bribery policies and all kind of documents every employee signs, yes, I did that too. Even in this company, I have done that, signing papers, all these policies, going through, boring training, sitting there, half of the people sleep. Yes, we have been through that, all of those things. Even our inspectors do. But again, there are other things that we have been dealing with quite intelligently and with simple logics. See, it's about money, and we fight money with money. So one is the salary. So we 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 kind of pay them a little higher than the industry averages, typically
Mhm.
15 to 20% higher than what average industry standard is. Two, they are getting bonuses. So we pay some bonuses based on the report accuracy and the timeliness of the report. So every report, the inspector stands at earning some bonus, but we don't pay them bonus right away every day. We hold
Mhm.
that bonus for 3 months or 6 months based on their performance. We pay them those bonuses. So the amount of bonus that we actually have for them to be paid is quite high compared with the bribery. So
Mhm.
it's a rare chance that the factory they bribe and they really take it happily, because they say, oh, if I take this bribery, if I'm caught, I'll be losing my job and I'll be losing all that bonus. So they quickly calculate and they're less tempted. Okay.
Mhm.
Then we also encourage the inspectors to inform us of those bribery cases. So if the factory is the one who is offering bribe, we reward the inspectors for reporting such issues. So they have to. So what we do is, let's say a factory, typically this thing happens around 11:30, 12, just before lunch. Okay, so the inspector can, he takes that money for that moment, clicks a picture, continues with his job, because otherwise it's a conflict and the inspection doesn't go on. So we don't want to waste your time, which you have paid us for. Okay, so we go for the inspection, we do it. Then in the evening, he gives it back to the factory. Hey, this is what I don't need. Thank you. Bye bye. Here is the report. He goes back, he reports to his manager, and we reward him. Okay, of course there is some investigation that is done, but eventually the guy is rewarded. So those things are also there. And I'm not saying we always safeguard only the inspectors, but we also give a tool to the factories to safeguard. And here is where there's also a difference between QIMA and the smaller, people here and there in China who do inspections. We also have a hotline number and an email address where any such case can be reported by a factory. So let's say if the inspector is asking for the money, the
Mhm.
factory can inform us, and right away we remove that inspector, send a new one, get the things done first, and later on we investigate with the factory and with the guy allegedly who has asked for it, and we do that investigation. If the guy is found at fault, we fire him right away. Okay, and there could be potentially a legal action also.
Mhm.
And then we also circulate this whole message across the company that, hey, this guy was found to be doing this at this factory at this date. We give the whole chain of events, and
Yeah.
we send an email out to the whole company that this is what happened and this is what the repercussion can be. So don't you dare.
Yeah, I think that's probably quite a good deterrent. I mean, anyway, when you're working with larger organizations, it's very different, as you said, to sort of using your brother's, sister's, uncle's, cousin to go and do an inspection, or a student or whoever who hasn't
Yeah,
got anybody that they're accountable to. They might be willing to take that brown envelope, and they probably don't even know what they're inspecting in the first place. I think I might have mentioned recently that a lot of people think a quality control inspection is just going in there with a ruler and just putting red arrows, and then having the ability of creating a report and saying, this is your QC report, please, $100, thank you very much. But obviously a
yeah,
lot more goes into QC. So, I
yeah,
mean, on the topic of QC, so you've been in the industry a long time. So
yeah.
what's some of the most major mistakes that you notice, not necessarily even just newbie sellers doing, but people who are
Mm,
slightly more experienced in ecom?
mm.
What are some of the mistakes that you've noticed that they might be falling into without even realizing that it's a mistake and probably not best practice? What are some of the key points and some key advice that you would give to all sellers at different levels regarding quality inspections?
So, just to go on a different note, I would actually call out people who are not doing lab testing. Inspection, look, inspection is more about the quality of the product you are trying to sell. Okay, I
Hmm.
want this, bottle to look like a, very luxury bottle, or I want to look like a very cheap bottle. Okay, that's different. That's about quality, and you are trying to compete based on quality. So yes, then you say, okay, fine, I want to do quality control. I want to make sure things are going right in the right direction before the things are moving out of the factory. Yes, great, do it. That will help you to stand out in the competition. Brilliant. But what things are really missing is a lab testing, because that's a legal situation. Speaking of the very experienced, the 6, 7, 8 figure, all that, financial jargon people keep talking about, even those people are doing mistakes
Yeah.
after so many years. I mean, there was one guy, and he came to me, hey, I'm selling this product, and it's been like 4 years. Everything was going fine, and even you know helped my friends to go into Amazon. I said, dude, you did a mistake, and so did your friends, because now you are in trouble. So
Mhm.
this is the biggest mistake I see. I don't know why people want to do it. They're like, yeah, okay, fine, nobody catches. I mean, you just keep praying to all your gods, and all you keep on wishing that don't get caught. That's all you're doing.
Yeah,
And
which
the moral responsibility, again, I really try to awaken the conscience of people. I don't know why it's not happening, but this is really sad. I mean, it feels like any unregulated market. I want to name a particular country or a particular e-commerce app. You know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Some of the Western countries, their e-commerce products are actually going down that level. I don't see much difference, honestly. What I
Yeah.
can buy locally here, it's kind of the same which I would buy perhaps in the US or UK, sadly. While people really look up like, hey, those countries have got the regulations, but nobody's following them, which is sad.
For sure. I mean, I couldn't agree more with you at this point, Rahul. I remember not too long ago, I think it might have been about 2 years ago, prior to Apple deciding to change their plug and charging system to the new sort of micro USB. When
Mm,
it was a standard USB charger, you could buy these things on these interesting third-party e-com seller platforms,
yeah.
and you can buy them at very low prices. You can either go buy an original Apple one as a replacement, which costs
Mm,
whatever it costs for whatever reasons it costs that price, because obviously they've
mm,
been through this whole testing process. Their
mm,
products are certified and guaranteed with a warranty and
mm,
so on. Or you
mm,
can go and pay £7 or 80 RMB or whatever it is and get it
mm.
shipped right the next day to you.
Yeah,
Now, we've actually had one of those blow in our socket, and that's a major issue. Now,
there
we've
you
got a
are.
little girl. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've got a baby girl that's, starting to crawl around and stuff. Now, had that thing occurred when she was near the socket, that's a
Yeah,
major hazard.
yeah,
So, I totally agree with you. I think aside from the ethical side of it, it's also you've got a duty of care and a responsibility
yeah,
to just put out good product. It's not a case of profits, profits,
yeah,
profits. Profits are
yeah,
great, but
yeah,
ultimately, we're all human beings. We should all be looking out for one another, and we should all be
yeah.
acting as ethically as
Absolutely.
possible.
You remind me of two of the documentaries I always keep suggesting people to watch these. Both of them are on Netflix. One is called Broken,
Yeah,
Broken, Broken,
yeah.
and the another one is called Rotten, Rotten.
Uh-huh.
Have a look at them. They're like not many episodes, like I think 4 or 5 episodes each.
Yeah.
Those both documentaries have actually addressed this issue. One of them actually had a case of a very famous European company. He was selling things in the US, and children died of their product, like literally died, and they paid billions in the fines.
I think I
The,
know what you're referring to. I think I
yeah.
know exactly what you're
So
referring
if you go to Netflix, just look for Broken and Rotten. These two documentary series are really, really nicely made, and they really tell what can actually go wrong. And it can go wrong with any one of us.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure.
And
I
it's strange,
mean,
like yesterday, I was on Facebook, and there was one guy. He was in the US, and he was really cribbing about regulations in California. Like, no, this is not good for the e-commerce sellers like us. Perhaps California is just the market for the big boss retailers. Uh, No, it's just that you did not calculate on the at the right time. The big boss, yes, I understand. Look, big companies, they have got compliance teams, they have got the right people focusing only on that particular subject. Fair, but even as a e-commerce seller, that doesn't say that you can be just shying away from your responsibility. You have still got the resources. You can come to us, you can go to any company like us, you can ask, the regulatory body themselves. Internet, I mean, we are in 21st century, everything is there. Just go and follow at the right time and you're fine.
yeah, no, definitely.
And
I
that's why
mean,
California is safe. I mean, I would love to buy things from California because I know things are safe out there. Or Germany. Germany is much better than anyone.
yeah, the Germans are very known to be very stringent with their quality and regulatory requirements. I think much more so than the UK, speaking from experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is all very interesting, and I'm glad that we had a chance to cover so much information and so in depth, because I really think it will open people's eyes to QC who might just have thought it's a case of sending an inspector around to do a pre-shipment inspection. That's where it ends. The whole lab testing aspects that you mentioned are very interesting and stuff that people really do need to be looking into. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that we had a chance to cover it. Look, Rahul, if people want to get in touch with you and reach out to you, what are the best ways of getting in touch?
Email is the best. Rahul.Chawla, RAHUL.CHWLA at QIMA.com, QIMA.com.
Okay,
And of course,
perfect.
you will have my WhatsApp and WeChat afterwards. After you send me an email, you will have all my phone numbers also.
Excellent. Well, Rahul, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure
Pleasure is
speaking
mine.
to you.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you.
And yeah, we'll catch up soon. All right, take care. Thank you again.